In this old photo, we see a beautiful woman with a camera, surrounded by Arab men and children. At first glance, she looks like just another photojournalist. A warm smile, jeans, a camera slung over her shoulder. Some would say she's a tourist. Others might guess, a freelance journalist from Paris. And they'd almost be right. Her name is Patricia Roxborough. At least, that's what her Canadian passport says. In the Arab world, she's known as a polite, charming, and seemingly harmless woman with a lens. But it was all a lie, carefully crafted. Behind that carefree smile hides a secret that cost lives to protect. She was a Mossad agent. Her real mission? To observe, report, and, when necessary, eliminate. If you were lucky, she only took your photo. The world now knows her real name, Sylvia Rafael. She was one of Mossad's top operatives, brave, intelligent, and calculated. For years, she moved undetected, infiltrated Arab communities, lived under false identities, and risked her life again and again. Everything was going according to plan, until one small detail gave her away. And just like that, everything fell apart. For decades, Mossad kept her story buried. The archives stayed sealed, but now the truth has come to light, and we finally know how one of Israel's most brilliant spies failed her most important mission. Get ready. This story is real, but it reads like the most thrilling spy novel you've ever heard. For decades, the Mossad, Israel's national intelligence agency, has been fighting a silent war. Their mission: eliminate threats, prevent terrorist attacks, gather intelligence abroad, and carry out special operations that no one is ever supposed to know about. Their budgets are classified, their numbers are unknown, and their successes and failures almost never see the light of day. But one thing is known. From the very beginning, the Mossad hasn't relied solely on men. Some of the boldest, riskiest, and most sophisticated operations in Israeli intelligence history were carried out by women. Beautiful, charming, harmless in appearance, and yet deadly. Their weapon isn't always a gun. Sometimes it's seduction. That's where the term honey trap comes from. Operations where a female agent gains an enemy's trust, lures him in, makes him fall for her, and when his guard is down, she gets the intel, slips him a sedative, or helps eliminate him, sometimes all three. Women attract less suspicion. They can enter places where men would immediately stand out. They know how to flirt, to disarm, to enchant. And behind their smiles often hide fearless operatives trained to deceive and destroy. Some Israeli rabbis have even declared such missions to be acceptable under Jewish law. In a study titled Forbidden Intimacy for the Sake of National Security, it's argued that seduction, in rare cases, may be not only allowed, but even a mitzvah, a good deed. The study quotes examples from scripture, like Yael, the wife of Hever, who lured Sisera, a military commander and enemy of Israel, into her tent. She lulled him to sleep, then drove a tent peg through his skull. One of the most famous modern examples is the Mossad agent known as Cindy. Her real name was Cheryl Bentov. She posed as a tourist, seduced Israeli whistleblower Mordecai Vanunu, and convinced him to fly to Rome with her. There, he was drugged, kidnapped by Mossad agents, and secretly flown back to Israel. Stories like these are rare, because the identities of Mossad's female spies are almost never revealed. They vanish like ghosts. But one woman's name became known across the world, Sylvia Rafael. She was one of Mossad's most successful and most tragic female operatives. Her mission failed, and that failure exploded into a global scandal. That's the only reason we know her name today. Her story has been told in articles, documentaries, and books. The most famous of them is Sylvia Rafael, The Life and Death of a Mossad Spy, written by author Ram Oren and former Mossad officer Moti Kafir. But how did Sylvia, a young woman born in South Africa, end up serving one of the most secretive intelligence agencies in the world? How did a school teacher become a deadly agent ready to kill or and die for a country that wasn't even hers by birth? What made her give up everything for a life of lies, fake identities, and covert missions? That is what we'll discover soon. Sylvia Rafael was born on April 1st, 1937, in the small South African town of Graaff-Reinet. It was a picturesque, sunlit province surrounded by hills and farmland, where everyone seemed to know each other. On the surface, life appeared peaceful, almost idyllic. But behind closed doors, Sylvia's family carried with them a deep sorrow and tragic memories that she learned about early on. Her father, a Jew, came from what is now Ukraine. As a child, he had survived one of the many brutal pogroms that swept through Eastern Europe. His entire family was murdered. He was the only one who escaped. Though he had built a new life in South Africa, the pain of that loss never left him. Sylvia grew up with this knowledge that her father's entire family had been slaughtered simply for being Jewish. Her mother, on the other hand, was a Christian, traditional and strict, raised with English manners and religious discipline. Sylvia's parents were polar opposites, and their differences shaped the atmosphere at home. Her father encouraged critical thinking, political awareness, and open discussion. Her mother urged modesty, obedience, and faith. From a young age, Sylvia gravitated toward her father's values. She was curious, sharp-tongued, and endlessly inquisitive. She devoured books, asked too many questions, and felt a growing fascination with Jewish identity, the Holocaust, Zionism, and the founding of the State of Israel. Although she wasn't considered Jewish by religious law, she felt deeply connected to the Jewish people. That contradiction frustrated her and motivated her. She wanted to prove her belonging, not through blood, but through action. She excelled in school, especially in languages and the humanities. After graduation, she became a teacher. Young, intelligent, and attractive, she could have easily stayed in South Africa, settled down, married, and lived a quiet life. But that kind of life didn't appeal to her. More and more, she felt like she didn't belong in South Africa. She felt a pull, a call of history, and that call led her to Israel. In the early 1960s, Sylvia made a life-changing decision. She left her job, her home, and her family behind and set out for Israel. Not as a tourist, but as a volunteer. Someone who genuinely wanted to help build and defend the country she believed was hers. She moved to a kibbutz called Ramat HaKovesh, started learning Hebrew, working in the fields, and integrating with the local community. Her determination didn't go unnoticed. She was energetic, disciplined, and deeply committed. People respected her. What surprised them most was how quickly she adapted to Israeli life. No one doubted that she truly believed in the cause and was willing to give everything for it. Eventually, her name came to the attention of those who were always watching, always looking for people like her, the Mossad. But that part of the story is just beginning. Sylvia Rafael came to Israel as an idealist. She worked on a kibbutz in Ramat HaKovesh, studied Hebrew, and tried to be helpful wherever she could. But her strong character, determination, and intellectual maturity soon caught the attention of those who recruited for the intelligence services. Mossad does not advertise job openings. Potential agents are observed, evaluated, and tested discreetly. That's how Sylvia's path began. She had no idea she was being watched, but someone in the kibbutz, who worked with the intelligence community, passed her name up the chain. There was an unusual woman here, not Israeli, but with true Zionist conviction, sharp skills, fluent in several languages, and able to blend into any environment. That was exactly what Mossad was looking for. One day, Sylvia was offered an interview for an important job serving the state. No details were given. She agreed, and so began a long and demanding selection process. The first stage was psychological testing. Sylvia was asked unexpected questions. Her stress tolerance and honesty were tested. They assessed her memory, attention to detail, and ability to react in unpredictable situations. Then came practical assignments. She could be suddenly pulled off a bus and asked to recall the faces of fellow passengers. Or she might be told to play a role, for example, a tourist lost in Tel Aviv, while being observed on how she interacted with strangers. A key part of the evaluation was her ability to transform. Sylvia had to switch accents, mannerisms, posture, even her smile. She passed every test brilliantly. Recruiters were especially impressed by her ability to instantly memorize faces, clothing, and small details, like a man's watch brand or the shade of lipstick on a saleswoman. She was observant, analytical, and invisible when she needed to be. She also spoke English, Afrikaans, and Hebrew fluently, and she quickly picked up Arabic. On top of that, she had a very European appearance and could easily pass for a Frenchwoman, a Canadian, or someone from Scandinavia, which opened up enormous possibilities for infiltration in Arab and Palestinian circles abroad. After passing all the tests, she was offered a place in the service. This wasn't a contract or a job, it was a vow. She signed a document pledging total secrecy, understanding that from now on she belonged to the system, forbidden from telling even her closest loved ones what she really did. That was when her true training began. She was trained under the supervision of Abraham Gemmer, a seasoned handler known for his discipline and high standards. The course included psychology, disguise, encryption, radio communication, surveillance, photography, hand-to-hand combat, and survival skills. Sylvia quickly proved to be one of the best. After several months, she received her first legend, a false identity. From now on, she was Patricia Roxborough, a freelance journalist from Canada living in Paris. But the real test still lay ahead, her first field operation abroad, and Sylvia was ready. After completing her Mossad training, Sylvia Rafael was given her first full undercover identity, a carefully crafted legend she would now wear like a second skin. From this point on, she was Patricia Roxborough, a young, attractive freelance photojournalist from Canada. She had a Canadian passport, a flawless backstory, and a convincing cover. According to her legend, she lived in Paris and traveled across Europe and the Middle East, covering protests, refugee crises, and humanitarian conflicts. On the surface, she seemed like a regular photojournalist with a passion for justice, but that was only the surface. In reality, Patricia was a mask. Behind it stood Sylvia, a Mossad agent trained to operate with precision, subtlety, and discipline. Her mission: gather intelligence, observe, infiltrate, build trust, and, if necessary, assist in neutralizing threats. She lived between two worlds. On the outside, a confident, free-spirited woman with a camera in hand and a story to tell. On the inside, constantly alert, cautious, always ready to disappear. She had no right to real closeness, to attachments, to routine. No friends, no family, no permanent home. Just rented apartments, coded phrases, and missions that no one would ever know about. In Paris, she was often seen in Arab neighborhoods. She spent days observing, photographing, talking to immigrants and activists. Her task was simple and deadly: gain the trust of Palestinian contacts and gather as much intelligence as possible. Everything she collected was sent back to headquarters. Her photos were genuinely good. Some were even published in newspapers and magazines, strengthening her cover. But sometimes, missions required more than just pictures. They required charm, participation in gatherings, flirtation, relationships. She had to sit across from men she knew were enemies of Israel and let them pour out their thoughts, all while pretending to be someone else. Still, Sylvia remained human. And one day, she fell in love. He was another undercover agent. His name was Hans, a German by birth, seemingly cold and calculated, but he had honest eyes and inner strength. Between them, something rare blossomed in the world of espionage: real affection. They spent little time together, short meetings in hotels, hurried walks, brief phone calls. But for Sylvia, it was enough. If there was anyone in her life she truly felt close to, it was him. Mossad, of course, frowned on personal attachments. Love is a vulnerability. But deep inside, Sylvia kept that bond. A quiet reminder that beneath the spy was a woman who longed to be loved. Meanwhile, the threat of Palestinian terrorism kept escalating. One group in particular struck fear into the hearts of Israelis: Black September. They had already carried out a series of attacks, but their most horrifying act came during the 1972 Munich Olympics. There, Black September terrorists took the Israeli Olympic team hostage. 11 athletes were murdered. The world watched in shock. The mastermind behind the massacre was a man named Ali Hassan Salameh. He was everything a dangerous enemy could be: intelligent, charismatic, disarming. Fluent in multiple languages, handsome, persuasive, his nickname was the Red Prince. He could charm diplomats, negotiate with warlords, and vanish without a trace. He ran Fatah's foreign intelligence arm and was the architect of Black September's most brutal missions: bombings, kidnappings, murders. For Mossad, he became target number one. Sylvia was tasked with infiltrating Arab communities in Europe to get close to him. Her cover, her language skills, her discretion, they made her perfect for the job. She tracked leads, followed whispers, and slowly moved closer. At one point, she was in the same city as Salama, just blocks away, close enough to watch, but too far to act. Her missions became more dangerous with each passing month. One slip could mean death. And then came the ultimate assignment. Sylvia was ordered to assist in the elimination of Ali Hassan Salama. It was the pinnacle of her career, or the beginning of its end. This was supposed to be her ultimate operation, the final step, the peak of her career, the grand finale of a long, dangerous hunt. Sylvia Rafael had received the order to take part in the elimination of Israel's most wanted terrorist, Ali Hassan Salama, known as the Red Prince. He was Mossad's personal nemesis, the chief planner of the Black September organization. Salama was extremely dangerous. He had international contacts, money, bodyguards, and, most importantly, the ability to disappear. Mossad had lost his trail multiple times, and now, a chance. Intelligence indicated that he was hiding in Norway, in the quiet and peaceful town of Lillehammer. The operation began perfectly. A team of Mossad agents, including Sylvia, arrived in Lillehammer in advance. They rented apartments, cars, checked routes, studied their targets' habits. The mission wasn't just about killing Salame. They had to be certain. One bullet would make them either heroes or the cause of a scandal. They began tracking a man who matched the description. He looked Middle Eastern, behaved cautiously, followed regular routines. The intel matched. Visual identification seemed to confirm it. Everything pointed to one conclusion. It was him. The decision was made. The target was confirmed. The operation approved. It happened in a matter of seconds. The man left a movie theater with his pregnant wife. And at that moment, the shots rang out. Bullets struck his back and head. He died instantly in front of his wife. But almost immediately, doubts crept in. Something wasn't right. The man's name wasn't Ali Hassan Salama. It was Ahmed Bouchiki. He was a Moroccan waiter and part-time musician married to a Norwegian woman. He had no ties to terrorism, no connection to any militant groups. He had simply resembled the wrong man. It was a fatal mistake. The Norwegian police launched an investigation. Very quickly, they noticed odd patterns. Too many foreigners in town, too many rental cars, strange movements. License plates were traced. Hotel records were reviewed. Suspicious phone calls and behavior raised alarms. One by one, the agents began to fall. Despite her experience and composure, Sylvia Rafael was also arrested. She had fake Canadian documents under the name Patricia Roxborough, cash, a camera with encrypted images, and cryptic notebooks. It was clear something was wrong. Sylvia tried to hold her cover. She claimed she was a tourist, a freelance photographer working on a photo project. But the evidence kept piling up. Her real name, Sylvia Rafael, made headlines around the world. The woman once hidden behind dozens of false identities was now exposed. It turned into an international scandal. Norway was outraged. Israel denied Mossad's involvement, but it no longer mattered. Everyone knew who was behind the operation. The press dubbed her the Israeli assassin, the Mossad femme fatale, the terrorist hunter. Sylvia ended up in prison. Alone, no contact with the outside world, no team, no escape plan, no safety net, just her and the cold silence of a foreign jail. And for the first time in years, she was completely vulnerable. No weapons, no aliases, no mission. She waited. Would she be extradited, put on trial, held indefinitely? No one knew, not even her. Her mission had failed, but the price was much higher than a botched operation. The price was her own freedom and her identity, now known to the world. The prison in Norway was nothing like the ones shown in movies. There were no bars on the windows, no cold concrete walls. The cells looked more like small studio apartments with furniture and books. Inmates had access to walks, sports, even work. But even in such comfortable conditions, the loneliness was unbearable. Sylvia spent a lot of time reflecting on her life, on her missions, on where she had gone wrong. But more than anything, she thought about what she had always lacked: simple, feminine happiness, love. The kind she used to dream about during long, sleepless nights in hotel rooms under false names, working undercover in Paris or the Arab world. And then, just when it seemed everything was lost, someone walked into her life who would change it completely. Aeneas Schut, her defense attorney. Cold, reserved, intelligent. At first, he was just a professional doing his job, but with every meeting, something deeper formed between them. Trust, warmth, and eventually, something more. He didn't see her as a Mossad agent or a criminal. He saw a woman exhausted by a life of deception. Meanwhile, the investigation continued. Israel officially denied any connection to the Lillehammer operation, but behind the scenes, Mossad hadn't abandoned Sylvia. They worked to protect her and minimize the charges. Eventually, the court sentenced her to 5.5 years in prison, a relatively lenient punishment considering the international scandal. In reality, she served just over 2 years. The soft prison conditions, her good behavior, and diplomatic pressure all played a role. She was released early. By then, her feelings for Schut were no longer a secret. After her release, Sylvia stayed in Norway, and before long, the two of them got married. She was nearly 40. For years, she had lived under false identities, hiding her emotions, carrying weapons and lies. But in this cold northern country, she finally found what she had always longed for: love, peace, and a relationship built on truth. Meanwhile, Mossad continued its mission. In 1979, Ali Hassan Salameh, the man Sylvia had risked everything to eliminate, was finally killed. His car was blown up in Beirut by remote detonation. It was part of Operation Wrath of God. Israel hadn't forgotten, and they finished what they had started. Later, Sylvia and her husband moved to Israel. The country she had served welcomed her back, not as a spy, but as someone who had walked an extraordinary path. Ahead of her lay a new chapter, one without cover stories or disguises. After her release from prison and marriage to Aeneas Schut, Sylvia Rafael left the world of espionage behind for good. She was no longer an undercover agent, but in Israel, where she moved with her husband shortly after their wedding, she was not forgotten. Mossad offered her a lot. Her name was known at the highest levels, not as a failed operative, but as a legend. The leadership believed she could take on a senior position within the agency, training new agents, coordinating female-led missions, advising on cover stories in human psychology. These offers came more than once, but Sylvia refused. Her choice was clear and firm. "I gave Mossad the best years of my life. Now I want to belong to myself and to my husband." She became a teacher, did translation work, helped new immigrants, and quietly built a peaceful life with Aeneas. They traveled together, met friends, and lived simply, almost invisibly. This was the happiness she had longed for. But time, as always, was merciless. In her later years, Sylvia was diagnosed with cancer. The disease progressed quickly. She fought it with the same strength she had shown during her Mossad training, the same resilience that carried her through isolation under deep cover and the cold walls of a Norwegian prison. But this time, the enemy was stronger. Sylvia Rafael died in Israel in 2005. She was buried with honors. Mossad representatives, veterans of the service, and close friends attended the funeral. To some, she was a hero. To others, a symbol of loyalty, endurance, and female strength. Even though Mossad never officially confirms details of its operations, the name Sylvia Rafael is forever written into the history of Israeli intelligence. Books have been written about her, documentaries have been made. She became a symbol of a woman who not only operated within one of the most dangerous intelligence agencies in the world, but did so without losing her humanity. Sylvia Rafael's story is not just about a spy. It's about a woman who chose to serve an idea, but never lost herself. Her final mission was the simplest and the hardest of all, to be happy. And she succeeded. But what do you think? Can someone who's lived a life of secrets ever truly find peace? Was Sylvia a hero, a victim, or something in between? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If this story moved you, hit the like button, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.